I didn't do terribly well in high school. I was okay. I was like getting a B average, maybe a little better. Did very well in math, especially algebra. That was my big one. I loved algebra. Not too much in the other thing. We didn't have any AP classes or anything like that at the time. It was all uh, algebra, trigonometry, geometry, that kind of thing that we had. No calculus. And I did fairly well in English literature because we had a good teacher. And I did all right in that. Not so good in history because memorizing was never my thing. I tried, but that's uh, I took a class in radio, which taught me a lot about electronics, and I really decided that that was something I liked a lot. I also read an article that said that uh, there was a big need for engineers. Engineers not only got good pay, but there was a big need and there were going to be jobs for a long time in that. We had a few aerospace industry companies in San Diego, and they were always looking for engineers. So I thought this is something I want to major in college. All of my time with the Civil Air Patrol and others, I really wanted to be an Air Force fighter pilot. So my plan when I got out of high school was I will I will go to ROTC, get out of college, become a fighter pilot with the Air Force. Then after I've spent my time, I will then leave the Air Force and be an engineer. And that was my grand plan. Didn't work out too badly. I didn't make it to fighter pilot, but I was Air Force. I didn't. I was a navigator and bombardiers, but I did pretty well with the engineering, and I got what I wanted. So when I went to college, I decided that I was going to take the easy route and go to the local college, San Diego State. It was a college at that time, not a university. It's a university now. And with that, I took some tests, got in. It was a local college, so I could commute. I could live at home. My folks said, that's fine, you can live at home. We won't charge you and all. And in fact, my dad even paid for books. I got free tuition. Tuition was $80 a year. To put that in perspective, the minimum wage was 75 cents an hour. So you can see that if you multiply the earnings then by 10, you get close to what people earn now. It was a little different, but you could see that the real thing that's gone up is tuition as well as housing costs. You could buy a house for, well, my folks, when they in the 40s, they bought their house for about 5,000. By the time that I went to college, excuse me, it was maybe 7 or 8,000. So it got up a bit, but it was still pretty reasonable to buy a house. And it was right around the kind of thing that people were making if they were making a lot of money. So um, it it was doable to go to college by commuting. I would make enough money by part-time jobs to pay for my car, which I had, by the way. Uh, when I was a junior in high school, there was a raffle. You'll see that a lot in Catholic schools. The raffle was for a car, and my mom bought some tickets for it. It was a 1952 Dodge, and when they won that 1952 Dodge, they gave the old car, which was a 1940 Plymouth, to me. And my job was to take care of it, allow my sister Evie, because she had put money into that car originally, let her drive it when she wanted to, but I could go back and forth to college and use it for dates and that kind of thing. And speaking of that, I did have a girlfriend in high school, the last year of high school. She dumped me at the end of that as we went into the summer. Uh, but I did date at that point. So when I started with San Diego State with the ROTC, and it was electronics engineering that I was going for. And that was the major that I selected. It was a 4-year program, should not have a problem with it. And of course, the ROTC classes at the end would make me a second lieutenant in the Air Force. And as I said, I was going for fighter pilot. College was tough. I had some real problems with it. Math was a lot harder than math had been in high school. Calculus is not a difficult subject. It's a fairly simple thing. But the way it was taught was by mathematicians who didn't explain it in the way that I needed to have things explained. And it was very difficult for me to catch on and get along. But I did. Didn't get great grades, but I did get through. However, after about 2 years, they announced that there would be no electronics engineering major, that was being cut out, that electronics was being put into the physics department, so I could get a degree in physics electronics. However, it would take me 4.5 years to do it because there were some physics courses that I didn't have that I would have to go back and take, and added to the engineering courses I'd already taken. The instructor, it turned out, the main instructor for electronics had left. And so physics was taking it over, and there were a couple of people who knew enough about electronics to teach it. And so I got through. I did join a fraternity about halfway through. And the other big thing that happened to me during that same time was that I met a girl. My sister worked at the Navy. One of my sisters worked for the Navy. She was a secretary at the 11th Naval District. And she had a co-worker who was in the Navy, and she was a seaman, and came from South Carolina. She was doing the same kind of thing, secretarial work. But she was out there in San Diego and didn't know anybody. And Evie invited her, my sister invited her to come to dinner at our house. She was a beautiful girl. And we got to know each other a little bit, started dating. And then we started thinking, well, we really like to get married. I figured that it was not going to be easy. I was still in college and didn't have much money. And my folks told me, well, once you're 21, you can do what you want. However, you can't live here if you get married. You're going to have to find a place to live. And she was making money. Anne was making a salary for being in the Navy. And so we got together, found an apartment, we got married. It was a simple ceremony because we didn't have money. We got married on the naval base by a chaplain. Now, I was a Catholic then. I was a very devout Catholic, and decided that she would convert from being a Baptist to being Catholic. And we got married in the chapel on the naval base, the naval training base at that time. It now is no longer owned by the military. We had no money for a honeymoon, but one of my fraternity buddies gave me $20. That's a lot of money in those days, and as a wedding present. And so we went to Escondido, spent a night there. Escondido at that time was nothing. It was a little place that we liked to go to occasionally. There was a lake nearby that was usually mostly dry. It was a dry water bed most of the time, but there were some water in some parts of it. Escondido was kind of a wide place on the road, had a couple of motels and a gas station and and a couple of shops and a police station that closed at 6 o'clock, I think, or something. It was just a small, sleepy town. But I found a motel up there that I could get for less than $20. And we went up, spent the night there, and that was our honeymoon. And then we moved into it was kind of a cottage on 32nd Street in San Diego. Little group of cottages that were just about the right size. They had a living room, one bedroom, and a kitchen, and then of course the bathroom, and that was it. We rented it for about $50 or $60 a month, and I remember the owner lived in a bigger cottage that was on the same property, and he used to like to look in the windows occasionally. I think he had a little problem, but he was a nice person and otherwise. And we did fine for a while. At one point, however, after about a year, Anne got pregnant. And we started realizing we were going to have to get a bigger place. Plus, she wasn't going to be able to work after a certain amount of time. I believe that they made her take a discharge before, I think it was 3 months before the baby was due. So we took the money we had saved some money, and we found another apartment with 2 bedrooms that we could get for $80 a month. And at that point, we moved. Now, I knew I was going to have to spend more time in school. I was working part-time. I had several jobs in college. I worked for the Navy for a while. I worked for General Dynamics, which was Convair, for a while. I did a lot of odd jobs before we were married. I scraped paint off of a wall one time with some people. I worked in a furniture store, moving furniture and putting it together. Did a lot of sales stuff. I sold pots and pans and silver and silver place settings, that kind of thing, and Bibles. I did very well with selling Bibles. Also, at that time, with all of that going on, I had decided that I wasn't sure engineering is what I really wanted to do. I had been working for a while. When I worked for the Navy, it was on Point Loma, which is where the ships come through a channel between North Island and Point Loma is a channel. They come through there into the bay where they tie up the Navy Yard. So I was working at something called the degaussing station out on the water. It was a lot of fun. Then when I got the job at Convair, I made more money, and that was when we were able to get married because I was making a little more money. I was working 20 hours a week, plus I was working all summer, and that I was able to save some money. And we got through those last year and a half of school. It wasn't easy, but we did it. So with all of that, I finally did get a degree in February of 1958, and I had a degree in physics, electronics, which was almost like having a degree in engineering. And I got my little gold bar as being a second lieutenant in the Air Force. I found out, however, in the last year or so, that my eyesight wasn't good enough for becoming a pilot. You had to have 20/20 vision to be a pilot. To be a navigator, you had to have 20/50 vision correctable to 20/20, which I did have. So I did graduate, barely graduated. My grade point average was poor. It was barely a C average, just a little over a C average. And I think part of it was part of the fact that I was able to graduate was a kindly professor in one of my engineering materials classes that decided to give me a B instead of a C, but it was very close. I made it, so that's enough for now, and I'll do the next one later.